Hi, everyone. Welcome to Behind the Scenes Marketing Podcast from SaaSBoomi. We have Varun, Shoor, Arun Pattabhiraman, and Noel Wax for our first ever BTS podcast. And today's topic is going to be on the art of event marketing. And let me quickly introduce our guest today, Arun Pattabhiraman. I've been working with him in Freshworks for a while, and there is a big list of things to say about Arun. So let me try to get everything in a couple of minutes. So Arun Pattabhi is the Chief Growth Officer at Freshworks, and one of the companies which is seeing the scale of which we can't even imagine, right? So the art of growth marketing at such a large scale. And he's seen the journey from the beginning, from InMobi to Hotstar, and now at Freshworks, and exciting times ahead for Indian ecosystem. That's Arun Pattabhi. Hi, Arun. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Arvind. Always a pleasure catching up with you again. And
welcome to BTS, Arun. Good to have you over here.
Thanks, Varun. Nice to be here as well.
And my second guest, Noel Wax. He's my dear friend, and kind of crazy things we have done together in the events. Can't wait to discuss them here. Noel is the CEO of GroundSwell Group, and we had the opportunity to work together in many events, right from flying the blimp on top of Salesforce Star. And he can stay for the true word, master of all trades. I will not say jack of all trades. With him on your side, I think you can pull off any marketing activities you want to do. So he's been a partner with Freshworks in pulling Refresh, and from the latest events to OnFest. And there's a long list of things about Noel. I think it's better it comes from you. Can you add a couple of things about you?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thanks so much for the invitation. Anytime anyone wants to speak about events, I sure hope that my name is on their list of people to call. And I agree, Arvind, it's been a wonderful friendship we formed over these many years now. Nice to join Arun and Varun as well. We'll talk more about this as the show progresses on, but the events world has certainly changed a lot since COVID joined us, not so much to our joy, but joined us and changed the landscape of how companies do their events, and things are starting to change again as we come out of some of these waves in some parts of the world, but looking forward to having those conversations. But we are a company that does produce and execute events from ideation to execution, and some of these, certainly the ones we've worked with you, Arvind, on, have been truly extraordinary. So we'll talk more about it as the show goes on.
Good to have you over here, Noel. So behind the scenes is where we literally bring behind the scenes stories around successful marketing execution, which has been done by Indian SaaS companies across the world. And we share the struggles, the successes, and the interesting happenings that happened when those events were being executed. So over here, we would expect both of you to be very candid. That's the thing about SaaSBoomi. We open it all. So Arvind, with that, the first question is on you.
All right. So I think I'll go to the most obvious question, right? So we've all been through a lot in the last couple of years, and the whole industry, as we know it, has been changed, right? So we are changing the game from live events to physical events to online. Again, things have started up. There are a new thing which is floating up called hybrid events. And in fact, I know Arun and Noel together pulled up one of the most successful hybrid events in the recent days called OnFest. So I want to know how this evolution happened and your learnings at the hybrid events and what people should know when they're looking to host something like that.
Sure. From my perspective, Arvind, I think necessity is the mother of invention, and I don't think we have much of an option left during these very strange and difficult times. There is definitely a need to break through the clutter, and with every event that we execute at Freshworks, we are trying to see how we can still stand out while still being able to achieve the business outcomes that we're chasing through an event. Hybrid events are definitely a good way to balance what's happening across the world as different regions are going through different stages of the pandemic. And I think it's one way in which we have used the hybrid event format to bring together people from different parts of the world, depending on the local context in which they operate. So the On Festival, which was executed by my European leadership team, marketing team, was one such example, because Europe was still coming back online in parts of the region. And we wanted to use that opportunity to just bring the mood back to events, right? Like let the energy come back to events. And the most interesting thing about that event was that it was an event where we actually didn't speak about our products at all. It was not about selling Freshworks. It was not about selling our products. It was just to get the energy back into the people and get them to come and talk about a topic that's closest to everyone's hearts, which is how to build a people first strategy. And that resonates not just with Freshworks customers, but also with every single business out there, which is struggling with keeping the mojo on during these really tough times. And I think that was the intent. I guess as we look into the future, hybrid events are here to stay. I think they offer some great benefits, not just from the perspective of bringing and driving engagement, but also I think it, from a tactical perspective, it helps us leverage the best of both worlds. One, from the aspect of getting people together on the ground, allowing them to interact, and that's really what events were all about in the past. But also in this new virtual world, it gives you the platform to get people who could have previously not participated in an event of this nature. So I think we are still, I would say, as everyone is trying to figure out the best hybrid event format, but it is a format that I think all companies are looking to fine tune as they look to scale their event marketing strategy. And I know that Noel was an integral part of our recent events, including the On Festival, and he'll have a lot more to share and a broader perspective of what he's seeing in the industry. So I'm looking forward to hearing his thoughts as well.
So Arun, I'm going to dig in on this a bit further. Can you take us back? So, COVID was a surprise for all of us, right? What was that emotion like in Freshworks when you realized that the offline event could not be executed? What was that journey like in terms of like taking a decision? We all know, yes, in hindsight, that this was something that should have been done, but it wasn't as clear back then. It was literally like everyone was panicking. They were not sure how the marketing is going to sustain. They were not even sure whether remote sales is going to work. So tell us a bit, like if you could rewind back, what really happened behind the scenes?
I think when the pandemic hit us, right, there was obviously, I would say, it took us time to even accept what was going on around us, right? For most of us, when we went into the pandemic and there were lockdowns imposed, we really thought we were going to get back to work in just a couple of weeks' time. And this was just a passing phase, because no one in our current generation had really experienced a pandemic of this scale. So a lot of the initial a few weeks or months, I would say, was just about wait and watch, but also, forcing ourselves to reimagine the way we would operate in this virtual world. In the initial first 1 month, I think it was less about how do we do events, or less about how do we drive demand during these tough times. It was more about, hey, what should we be doing to demonstrate more empathy towards everyone that we work with, be it employees or customers or partners. And then from that perspective, when we start looking at the world, I think the first thing that we wanted to do was to ensure that we went back to our customers to really understand what was changing in their world. Because any strategy that you formulate, whether it is an event or any other marketing program that you develop, has to be seeded on the back of great insights that come from your customers. So we really wanted to understand what was happening in our customers' world. And that's when we realized that, hey, the pandemic has struck pretty much everyone, but different businesses were responding and reacting differently to the pandemic, right? There were industries that were doing phenomenally well even during the pandemic. If you were to think about the educational technology, edtech industries, or e-commerce, or entertainment, these were industries that were growing despite the pandemic. And there were other industries which were more like wait and watch, which is like the business and professional services, IT, etc. And then there were there were industries that were definitely completely badly impacted by the pandemic, like travel and hospitality and so on. So just understanding what was really happening around the world was extremely critical for us to then devise a very targeted and a segmented approach for marketing as well. And that's when we realized that we don't have to have one strategy or one marketing program, but something that could be tailor-made to each industry. And specifically coming down to events, obviously we realized that everyone was moving digital and everyone was running marketing campaigns. So there was a lot of digital fatigue. So our goal was to really differentiate the content that we create even as part of an online event. So initially, if I remember, we had an event called a virtual summit called Experience IT, which was meant to have been a virtual summit that brought together all IT practitioners to talk about digital transformation and the way world was changing. But then the pandemic hit us, and then we realized that, hey, yet another virtual summit is just not going to help us drive audience or engagement. We wanted to use this opportunity to create content in a manner that our audience would love to consume or is already used to consuming, which is like so we decided to build a Netflix like docu-series, right? The content was the essence of the content was exactly the same, because we were still talking about how IT was transforming, how remote work was becoming the future, and how IT practitioners and CIOs had to rethink their and reimagine the strategy. But the way the content was presented was completely unique, because we started taking an approach of building a docu-series with all these IT influencers and leaders who were brought to the same forum to express their, and that content format and the way we promoted it worked really, really well. I mean, we never expected, but it was the month 2 or month 3 of the pandemic. I think it was somewhere in the middle of last year, around June, July, and we had over 10,000 people logging into that online platform to watch what we had to say, only because the way in which the content was presented was so unique and refreshing, right? So I think there was a constant push internally to differentiate and stand out, but at the same time be empathetic to what was happening to our customers. And therefore the content strategy was driven by what was really happening around us, and we didn't want to be tone deaf. The fear of being tone deaf also drove a lot of the content that we created to ensure that it resonated, it made sense, it was sounding empathetic, and it was being helpful to the people around us, to our customers, our partners, and even to our employees. So I think that's really how we tackled the first few months of the pandemic. But the good news is we didn't see much of a negative impact, because we were constantly pushing the frontiers.
Yeah, I still remember, and Girish is amazing at this, right? So I still remember when he posted that blog post where he actually compared the event as a Duckworth-Lewis method in cricket, as if the score-taking method had changed. And I'm always in awe of his storytelling skills, and I think that was actually a very metaphorical way of describing that. We still have to win this game.
Yeah.
Just that the way that we are keeping score has changed, and now we're going to play the game very differently, but we're still winning. And I thought that was very impressive. Yeah.
And just a follow up on that, right? So I did see a lot of companies go virtual, and there is a fatigue of overload of content and everything. So I just want to go really deep into how you actually took the decision of doing a live event, and what was the mindset of people to attend that event, and how did you even drive registration? I know it was a huge success. People were there in each cities, and then you were able to generate so many registrations. Like, I want to know, because I'm getting 10 mails a day, like, attend this event, and like, you were able to successfully drive. I want to know, how did you do that, like driving registrations?
I think one of the things that we have constantly employed as a strategy on the ground to drive registrations for events is to not just leverage marketing channels, but also to leverage our sales and SDR teams to drive registrations. I think there is growing recognition and realization that it is often a great way for a sales or an SDR to open doors by inviting them to an event where they can have a deeper conversation than to just call them and try to sell them software, right? So there is always a very heavy partnership within the various GTM teams inside Freshworks when we try to drive registrations. It's not just the marketing team trying to pull its weight, but also the sales and SDR teams. And imagine that when, especially for Freshworks, we are working in such a large TAM that we have huge set of accounts that people are anyways calling into. So imagine each of those SDRs and sales outbound calls being used as an opportunity to invite our prospects to an event. I think that became a huge growth lever to create awareness and drive registrations. And the second is also going beyond our immediate marketing campaigns digitally or own properties, but partnering with local publications, tier one media to drive visibility and uh, you know registrations for the event. So this has become a standard practice that in most of the large events, we do work with some of the local publishers in the region who not only drive buzz around the event, but also then partner with us to drive registrations. I think the third one is really leveraging our network of partners to drive registrations. So we, as you're aware, Arvind, we work with a lot of different kind of partners, be it resellers or ISVs or strategic partners at Freshworks, and each of them bring with them a unique set of audience, right? I think co-marketing with partners is a fantastic way to drive registrations, and we have always tried to leverage them also as a way to access new audiences and drive registrations for any marketing activity. So when we drive an event or a major marketing campaign at Freshworks, it's never just the marketing team alone trying to pull its weight, but it's the sales, the SDRs, the customer success teams, our external partners, the local tier one media in the region, all of whom actually come together to drive registrations and visibility. And that's what has made some of our events really large scale and successful. And that's how we approach that.
I think that's a very, very important point that you've made, because generally in even smaller companies, there's this culture of tossing over the wall that, this audience generation is marketing's responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's less seen as like a company-wide initiative. So the way that you're describing it to me, it seems everyone in Freshworks is a marketer. So it's not like a toss it over the wall culture.
Absolutely. When we have a global team of 250 SDRs and a few hundreds of sales reps, right? Every call that they are making out is an opportunity to create an awareness for the brand and to talk about what we are doing. So we definitely, it's when we have a big event, it's all hands on the deck at Freshworks, right? Every single team, which is on the go-to-market side, or even employee advocacy, is used extensively to drive registrations, right? We have 4,000 employees across the globe, just ensuring that we are getting the word out through them deliberately and consciously. I think that also helps drive us. So it's definitely
phenomenal
a team game than an individual marketing team's effort.
I'm going to ask you, and Noel, we're going to get back to you on this one. We're not leaving you alone, don't worry. So
I'm enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you about this docu-series. So when it comes to parallels across the Western market, I think the one that comes to mind is MailChimp, where the content is not just about and it's now even become increasingly less so about email marketing. It's about what makes their audience successful. So they kind of showcase their audience in successful situations. So they might showcase someone pulling off a really successful initiative as a small business bakery, right? And that's that docu-series kind of content that comes to my mind when I think about it. Tell us about the genesis of that idea. Why shy away from the traditional run-of-the-mill content ideas where someone comes in and speaks versus showcasing this? What is the genesis of that idea? How did you go about finalizing which aspects of your customer's life would you showcase as part of this docu-series? And what was the reception actually like? I mean, we know that people loved it and there was an increased audience, but tell us a bit more about how that affected your brand. And if you remember some anecdotes from your customers, if someone mentioned this, that would also be very helpful.
First of all, I think when we're thinking about creating a differentiated sort of an event, there was a very huge debate within my teams, right? I would say that our Europe marketing leader always wanted to do something very, very different, and we were very nervous about doing something that is it was completely different, and we didn't know if it was going to drive registration. So there was a lot of healthy debate. But I think the what really pushed us to do something different was the fact that there was so much digital clutter out there, right? All offline events had dried out, and people were consistently getting bombarded with a ton of content, whether it is an event or email or whatever that is, right? So there was a real need to stand out and differentiate ourselves. I think that was the first one. The second motivator was to really think, when we thought about what is the content format that we want to create, we were very clear that, at the end of the day, whether you're in B2B or in B2C, you are marketing to people, right? And when you are marketing to people, what matters is how they feel versus what you say, right? So I think that drove some of the innovation in the content format itself, because when you are watching a Netflix documentary, you are super engaged because of the style that has been taken to present the same content. It's one thing to have somebody come and speak and say something like I'm saying right now, right? But versus someone who just cinematographically shot in a very interesting way, with great music, with great background, with a storyline, weaving, talking about the most important aspects, but hearing perspectives from different leaders within one video, rather than just having a monologue between one person and probably an interviewer. So I think those were some of the aspects that, so we wanted to create content in a manner that consumers were actually consuming content. We realized and recognized that we were actually marketing to people, and people are bored and they do have a lot more time. So it is our game to lose if we were not creating content that they would want to consume. So that was the second part. And the third is obviously, how do you marry all of this with what is relevant for the business and what is relevant for our audience, right? So, and that's where I felt, like I mentioned, speaking to our customers, speaking to our partners, really understanding what was happening in the industry around that time. And for us, obviously, a lot of companies were grappling with, questions about the future. What was the future of work going to look like? How is, the world going to look beyond their businesses, right? How do they balance their personal and professional lives? So these were some of the things that were top of mind. And when you're trying, as a content creator, when you're trying to create content, you need to tap into, what's on top of people's mind. And I think that drove a lot of decisions around the kind of content we created and the questions we asked some of the people who participated in our shows, right? And getting the right people who are seen as experts in their own right to become a part of that program. So one is just having the format. The second is what's the topic that you want to cover, and third is who is giving opinions on this, right? Are these the people who really truly understand the space and are considered authoritative in terms of how they think about shaping the future of the world? I think those were some of the guiding factors that ultimately shaped the event the way it is. And obviously the feedback was phenomenal. One, because it's just different, right? So even when we were promoting the content, it felt like we were releasing trailers of some Netflix docu-series, and this just created a lot more buzz and a lot of excitement. And eventually we made the content available on demand post publishing them on a particular date, and therefore we extended the shelf life of that content. So for almost like 3 to 6 months or even beyond, we still saw a lot of traffic on the website and a lot of people coming back and downloading that content. So it was not just the number of registrations we drove at the time of the event, but also how much engagement we could drive beyond. And the general feedback was phenomenal. And I mean, not just from an awareness and buzz perspective, when we look back and looked at the event, we also saw direct pipeline impact coming from these events as well, because the same SDRs who were calling out to drive registrations for this event could also follow up later and have a more meaningful conversation, right? So it's not just what you do before you launch an event, but also what you do after to ensure that you are able to get value from all the investments you've made.
And we're now going to shine the spotlight on you, Noel. But before we do that, I just want to call out one very important thing that you've mentioned. These docu-series of bringing out these stories and narratives didn't seem as clear in hindsight. In the B2B world, we generally come up with a facade. And that's what it used to be in events. Everyone would dress up and they would show up at these offline events. What the pandemic did was show us each other our homes, right? You can see my background in my home office. I can see Noel's background. So that's what it did. And you made it more personal. So kudos to you for that. Arvind.
Absolutely.
Spotlights on Noel now.
So I've seen you executing offline events like for a long time. But I also see that the game has changed, and what really happened in the hybrid event, like what are the new learnings, right? Like running the show there, and also there are thousands of audience online waiting to the show, waiting to see the event. Like the whole prepping for this event and what the to-do list, everything changed. Right? I am curious myself. I've done a lot of events. I'm like, how did you pull it off? Like the hybrid event, what is that should we be looking for or learning from in these new type of events?
Right. Thank you. And by the way, I'm not sure if I'm more excited about being a guest or actually when the show airs being a listener, because I'm taking notes furiously over here for those that are listening and not watching, you'll have seen me nodding my head for the entire time that Arun was speaking. I just magical thoughts about how these things can be done and done the right way. And there's a reason why successes are happening. And for me, success leaves clues, right? Some of the words I wrote down when I was listening to the conversation here a moment ago, relationships, trust, and time, right? Time is the most precious resource that any of us have. When you're asking someone for their time, I think we need to take that very seriously, whether it's creating a great piece of content to entertain or enjoy. When Freshworks decided to create a Netflix-like series, that hasn't been done before. But it's also asking someone for their time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever that is. They have earned, as many companies have, the trust of their customer, and the relationships they have built allowed for that conversion to happen. And those are critical in all aspects of marketing, events notwithstanding. And that's where I think the piece of the overall marketing strategy and puzzle fits in so nicely here, is that these events are places where you can forge, create, and continue and foster those relationships and build that trust with a prospect or a customer. You want them ultimately to be your champions as well, as they tell the stories about what it's like to work with you. And there's just a lot of different ways for that to happen. Events are just one of them. There was not a worse industry to be in than ours, event production, when COVID hit. You think about the airline industry, I wouldn't want to have been in that. You think about hospitality, Arun mentioned that. That's not a place you would want to be. I would not have wanted to own a restaurant. I would not have wanted to run an event production company. That's what I did. So I remember having a conversation with Girish, CEO of Freshworks. At one point, he said, "No, you're going to have to figure out something different to do." And I was committed. I knew that there would be a time that we would evolve through event production as we all knew it, but certainly to pivot and understand. And the reason that we could was two of those three things. One, we had the luxury of time, so we weren't producing any events, but relationships and trust. Our clients, our prospects, our customers were calling us, asking us what should they do. They had an event plan, and this was March of 2020, an event plan, whether that event production, whether the event was going to go on or not. They were calling us, should we go to the event? If we don't go to the event, what should we in fact do? So it really very quickly moved, obviously, from a live event production with live people showing up, whether that was a trade show or a conference or anyone, any sort of an event, a concert, a sporting event, to a virtual capacity, right? So that moved very quickly. The reason Zoom got on the map as well as they had was that exact thing. People got really good, companies got really good at converting. And we recommended to people at that time, don't cancel your event. Create a virtual event so that you can continue to forge that relationship with your customers and your prospects. Don't give them a reason to go somewhere else or to forget about you. It's really important to continue marketing to them, providing them with great content, education, information, help their business grow. So that conversion was fairly a natural one, but it got very, very crowded, right? People just ended up on Zoom. They'd have calls and meetings, and they would convert it, and you'd try to do unique entertainment. You'd still invite the celebrity or the guest speaker there, but those started to look fairly similar and almost the same. And how could you differentiate between those? So our advice at that time was, yes, get what we call here your blocking and tackling. It's a US term, it's football, but your X's and O's. Execute, make sure you're doing the things that you need to do really, really well, because your customers and prospects will see that. If you're just trying to throw something online, your customer is going to know if you paid attention to it, you took the time, you cared enough about them, you thought about what they needed, and deliver something to them that's valuable, because again, you're asking people for their time. So where we saw the companies rise above was, yes, let's lock in all of our good blocking and tackling and execution strategy as we would for a live event. Let's do that online. And what else can we add to this to make it unique, make it special, make it entertaining? And Arun really nailed it. Those that were winning were not just trying to sell people something or move that event online, but offer something of value, unique and different content, not necessarily ask for the sale or make it all about the product. Do something special, create unique environments for people to say, I'm going to spend a half hour here and it was great. And then leaving from that experience saying, I'm glad I spent my time doing that. When I think about the online content that was delivered very special is you're still generating that relationship. You're still generating new leads. What you then do with those leads is a unique specialty, right? Nurture those relationships. What are you doing after the fact? How can you move someone from viewing your show or your content to having a conversation, a dialogue with them. And that's each company's specialty and how they move that down the funnel or nurture that relationship. And then we moved into hybrid, which as events started to show up, and it's still a murky waters. So we just learned that the Gartner event in Barcelona has been canceled. That's supposed to be later this year. A number of events are starting to cancel again, but many more are starting to happen, depending upon where you are and where you live. There's a lot more of those events. When Freshworks approached us, and it was Arun's European team, Arun, of course, very much involved as well, is how can we create an event that is unique and special and entertaining? And the thought that came to our mind was a lot more along the lines of entertainment, like Academy Awards, again, a big US event, but everyone's probably familiar with that. Academy Awards or Grammys, a big show meets technology. Not a lot of technology companies were doing that, certainly not SaaS companies, but how can we entertain our guests, make it something where they want to attend in person if they can, take in all the protocols needed for COVID for people to feel safe and comfortable, and then introduce an audience online that feels like they're part of this as well. We're not just speaking to that live audience, we're speaking to the virtual audience as well, and entertaining for them, giving them some choice and control. So as we move toward the future now, we look at this and say, okay, where's the benefit? If it's in your hometown, an event, and you can safely attend and you trust that company to put on an event that you will walk away still healthy and well, and you want to know the content, you've trusted they put on great events before, I'm going to attend. You might even hop on a short flight or drive somewhere to do that. And we're going to start seeing that pick back up again, where people want to get out of their home, want to get out of their home office and fly somewhere. Here it's Las Vegas or New York or somewhere they always love to do. But it also gives you an option to say, I don't feel comfortable doing that, or it might save a company a whole bunch of money to say, we're not going to fly 10 of our staff out there this year. We don't need the expense of the hotel, the airfare, but I still certainly want to be engaged. Maybe instead of 10 people going to that conference, I'm going to send 2 or 5 or some key people, and I'm going to buy another number of those folks to attend virtually. We're going to make sure those people convene when people that went to the event come back. Those that were home, tell us about your learnings. What can we do? So that's where I see this going. It really gives companies, people, individuals a little bit more choice and control, potentially an opportunity to save some money if they want to go virtual as opposed to attending, but also affords the opportunity for people to still want to network and meet and be part of that. And that's where the companies that are doing this really well. It's about the relationships and about the trust, and knowing that with the time that you're spending and the money that you're spending, you're going to be giving something of great value. And then I think we can get it more into sort of the ROI aspect of that, what certain things you need to look for at these events when you're attending or hosting them. You can say this was a valuable operation. I know early on in our preparation calls, we talked a little bit about what some of the challenges are for potentially, SaaS-based companies or India-based SaaS companies on, maybe what does the event industry look like for me? These look like really expensive events for us to participate in. How can I ensure that I'm generating value and an ROI of the experience that we have, whether we attend an event as a guest, we're part of a conference, a trade show, or hosting our own event and spending lots of money to do that. So those are my thoughts on that, but it's a really important thing for all companies to consider. And moving forward, we certainly would recommend a hybrid option because it gives a larger audience of people to participate in your event. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be expensive. Obviously, you want to create your ROI, and we like to call return on objective as opposed to ROI. But once you have that all set, it's certainly an important thing to consider.
Yeah, I don't know
Right.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm really starting to miss those event lunches where you'd stand with that plate in the hand and that art of eating using the other hand. I personally am really starting to miss that. Noel, I think you've made one very important point. So a lot of times, when an organization is hosting this event, the perspective is usually inside out. So what is that message that I want to convey to the customers? It's less so outside in. And in that, explanation of respecting the customer's time and giving something of value, I think what you're really fundamentally alluding to is that whenever you're hosting these events, it's important to think from the perspective of the customer and not just the message of the things that you want to sell to them. And I think that's really phenomenal in the way that you describe that.
Yeah, it's absolutely essential. And just one point on that, as I prepared for this conversation, there are, again, I'll refer to the term blocking and tackling. There's a lot of things that you absolutely must do when you are either hosting or participating in an event. And those are some basics. You could do a Google search and figure out what are the 7 things I need to do in an event to get my ROI or ROO. one of the things I thought about that is absolutely essential and a key difference maker for those that are either hosting an event or attending an event is send your best people there, right? I always use the example of anybody can buy a table at a conference. You could set up a nice chair, you could spend a little bit more money, make it more elaborate. But if the person that is representing your company is not the best at what they do, it's the same show. You have the same people. Why do some companies walk away saying that was not a positive experience for me? I don't know if we're going to come back next year, versus another company at the same show that said that was incredible. I generated X amount of leads from there, qualified leads. I was able to set up a bunch of meetings that we were going to have at the event. We had a fully engaging opportunity. We didn't spend too much time with people there because we don't waste their time, but we had a great follow-up strategy for them. Those are the winners. And what I find the difference is there's those that send their best out there, and we've experienced this time and time again. It's your best salesperson or your best marketer, someone that can actually engage with that customer, start and build the relationship and build trust. That is absolutely an essential. And it's often overlooked. As long as we have somebody there, it's great, but that is the difference between 2x versus 5x versus 10x return, is who is that person that's representing your company, or people that are representing your company at that event. It's an amazing and much overlooked aspect of these events that we're attending, is that simple fact.
So this is a question to both of you. Like, if you had to list top 3 things which make an event successful for a company, strategies that they should adopt, because a lot of folks think, and I know a lot of startups who tend to attend these events for the first time think of this as putting on a show, which it isn't, right? I'm specifically talking about offline events over here. What are those top 3 things which make an event successful from your learning and experience for any startup out there? Like, what's that advice that you'd give to them? So let's start with you, Arun, and then we're going to go back to Noel.
For me, I think the first one is to really know what you want from the event, setting your objectives and goals, right? Because there are different types of events that can be done, and different formats that lend themselves to different goals, business goals, right? So oftentimes we just think of an event as, oh, let's just do an event, right? And without having a very clear articulation of what the event is supposed to deliver for the business, right? The second is not prioritizing the content of the event and the format of the content enough, right? I think it's important to ensure that, given, like Noel mentioned, that you're asking for somebody's time, which is the most precious asset today, to come and attend an event and spend a couple of hours doing that, it is extremely important to get your content strategy right? Do you have content that people would be willing to spend their time and money and effort to come attend? I think that's the second one. And the third, I would really say, is getting alignment internally within your organization around an event. Oftentimes an event is perceived as a marketing team's effort, and that becomes the issue, because you're not doing an event for the marketing team or for the marketing teams to meet its goals. You're doing an event for the organization, and therefore it is the business goal that you're trying to drive through an event. So how do you ensure there is absolute internal alignment all the way from the CEO to the marketing to the sales and any product team, whoever needs to be involved in that, right? Like getting everyone aligned around an event and ensuring that everyone is equally excited and convinced about what we're doing there. I think it's extremely important before you actually plan out event promotions, event execution, and so on. To me, those are the top 3 things that I would really care about.
Noel.
I'm so glad you asked this question, because I looked at my notes. I actually have 15 answers to that, but I will give you my top 3. Do I have to count the bring your best talent out there? I've already discussed that, so can I give you 3 others?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Here's my 3. Know where your customer or prospect, know what they're attending, what events are they going to. That's your first line, is I need to go where my customers are. If you don't know, which you probably should and probably do, ask your customer, what are they going to? What events are they going to? What's the most fun? What's the most entertaining? What's the most educational? And get your laundry list. And once you start seeing repeat attendees, that's probably where you want to be. So that's the first line. Is it a Gartner event? Is it a SITS event? Pretty easy to determine which ones those are. 2 is, how do you draw or inspire a crowd or attendees to come to you? And this is assuming it's a trade show or a conference and not your own event, although that's important too. How do you draw a crowd? What can you do that's unique and special and different? Again, we've talked a lot about blocking and tackling, the basic stuff you need to have there, but what's a unique draw? Maybe it's in what you give to somebody when they come by, and it shouldn't just be a bowl of candy. How you capture their interest and make yourself memorable. Do you have something there that stands out? We did one event with, it was a CCW conference with Freshworks, and we sent out smoothie bikes, and people got to exercise while they were making a smoothie, and it was incredibly memorable, and pictures were fun. They had a good time. It gave people a chance to talk with, assuming they weren't out of breath from making their smoothie, chance to talk to the customer when they came by the booth. It was memorable. So, something fun. It doesn't have to be, you're not creating a spaceship here, just something unique. So number 2 is, how do you draw the crowd? And 3, in as much as time is the most precious resource we have, preparation is one of the very, very few things that we can control. You don't know what your outcomes are going to be once you involve another human being in that interaction, but you can prepare. And to that, you need to set what your desired outcomes are for that event. And just, a quick short list of those things. How many qualified leads do you want to generate? Is that realistic? Right? So if there's going to be 1,000 attendees and you say you want 1,500 qualified leads to make your ROI, unrealistic. But if it's 1,000 attendees and you want 50 to 100 qualified leads, that's very realistic. Build brand awareness with a target audience up by 20%. Maybe that's a goal. Are you launching a new product or a demo? What kind of media exposure do you want? What kind of networking do you want to see happen? Plan your meetings in advance. What kind of a publicity outcome do you need? Do you want an article written about you, an influencer on social media? So those are all things you can prepare and set. And once you've set those, you can work towards defining and achieving those goals. So to recap, 1, where's your customer prospect? What are they attending? 2, how do you draw a crowd to what you are doing there so you can make the experience positive for your people, your staff, and your guests, prospects, and employee and customers. And then prepare and set your desired outcomes for that event so you can work towards specific goals that will make it feel like you've returned on the investment, or returned on the objective that you've set for it.
Arvind, you'll have to bear with me because I'm getting greedy with my questions. I have one more question because I'm fully engaged on this one. I'm like wired on this one. If you were to draw a line, right, on one side you have, I would say, demand generation in marketing. You have demand generation. On the other side, you have brand marketing. And as you move towards this other side of marketing, the amount of dollars that you're spending are kind of like going into a sinkhole. It's very difficult to trace the ROI or the CAC around those dollars. Where on this line would events fall for best-in-class companies, in your opinion? Because generally, a lot of people tend to see events more towards the right. Is that true?
I feel like I've been greedy with my answers, so I'm happy to jump right in, or if we want us both, maybe Arun takes the first one at it. Arun,
Noel,
you want to go first?
Go ahead, Noel. I'm sure you're hearing more than just
you're asking a guy who's in the events business, so of course I'm going to think it's one of the most essential things you could possibly do. But I do think it's more for a bit of an evolved brand. If I think about Freshworks and some of the stuff we were doing early on, it was fun, interactive, engaging, and as the brand matured, so too did the event participation, going from creating their own from piggybacking on other things and potentially going where their customers are, maybe even through the competitors and how they're hosting them, to a really mature brand. And that's where events also evolve from piggybacking on a conference or a trade show where you should be that someone else is hosting, to creating your own. When we did the first Refresh conference back in 2018 in New York, it was 400 people that came, and each year it's evolved and grown. And that was a great first step. And this year it's going to be, I believe, thousands of people that will attending. But those relationships, those people will come back, and then they'll tell their friends about it, their colleagues about it, what a great experience I had there. 400 becomes 1,100, becomes 2,000, becomes 5,000. So I'm not direct. The answer to your question is, I think it's a part of the overall mix. I do think you need to develop the brand to a level where people trust what you say you're going to do, the product you're offering, the service that you're offering, and that needs to be consistent. You want to get your attrition rates really low so your customers become ambassadors for you and tell your story for you, and then weave the events in as part of the media marketing mix, because you can do X number of these over the course of the year. You want to be seen. You want to be able to shake people's hand. You want people to know what you're the people they've been talking to, either online or over the phone, what they look like, what they act like, what they like to do, create some entertainment opportunities, and then share those stories more. So I think it's a smaller part of the overall mix as you get started. and then it continues to grow. But I never think it's a huge chunk of it, but I think it's an important chunk of it. And I wouldn't put a necessarily percentage on it, but I think when you get to a certain point, you do have to do events of some kind, but they move from participation in someone else's event to creating and hosting your own, because you can stand on your own 2 feet with your brand and the promise you've made as a brand.
So we're going to move to rapid fire, and Arvind's going to ask all those questions. But before we do that, Arun, are you able to trace back the dollars spent on your events as part of your CAC calculation at Freshworks? Or is it generally treated again as part of like your brand marketing mix, where it's more around just spreading the awareness versus being able to find out like the CAC around each acquisition that comes in from that?
No, we have a fairly sophisticated methodology that we use to actually track the ROI from not just events, but every single channel on which we actually spend money, and events are also included in that. The way we do that is by first ensuring that we have the robust infrastructure to track every single touch point that we have with the prospect across the journey, from web to digital to offline to events to content to third-party content syndication platforms and so on. So a lot of our early investments was made towards building that infrastructure, which can capture accurately the various touch points that we have with the prospect. The second is building out a robust multi-touch attribution methodology that actually, apportions credit, to each of those touch points and the value of those touches towards actually driving the business outcome, which could be pipeline or revenue or whatever that is. And once you have that infrastructure and once you have the attribution framework, then it becomes fairly easy to marry how much of an pipeline is attributable to a particular tactic that you employed, which could be an event or a webinar or whatever that is, and then calculate return on marketing investments. In our world, there is, we measure return on marketing investments at a very, very deep level, right? And going back to your point, I think when you have these conversations around whether an event is supposed to influence the brand and grow your brand or actually drive demand, my honest and strong belief is that, the lines between brand and performance marketing are and will continue to blur, right? Especially when you think about an event, and it really depends on the kind of event that you're talking about. Are you talking about a corporate level conference that you're hosting, or are you talking about a third-party trade show that you are sponsoring, attending, or doing something, or are you actually talking about a very intimate, small, one-to-one sort of an event that you're executing on the ground for some of your ABM programs? So the type of event and the goal of that event is very, very different when you think about these different formats. And you also start looking at ROI from each of these different formats in a different lens. When you're looking at your own large sort of owned event or a conference that you're hosting, there is definitely going to be a significant impact in driving your brand equity through those events, because it really comes down to the kind of experience you're creating for your audience in that platform. And obviously, you're going to get prospects and customers in that event. Therefore, pipeline is also going to get generated. So as long as you have the ability to measure all of these aspects, I think there is no running away from the fact that an event is an event is an event, and it will impact everything from brand to demand. And I remember we had this very passionate conversation even with Arvind when he was at Freshworks on whether events were supposed to be sitting under brand or should be sitting in the growth. And I was a very vocal proponent saying an event does everything, that we need to figure out what that event needs to deliver for us and then optimize our internal go-to-market strategy around that approach. So from that perspective, I think there are very clear ways in which you can measure the impact of an event across both brand and demand metrics. It is important to invest in the right infrastructure and have a right attribution methodology that everyone internally is aligned around for you to be able to understand what impact that event is creating for the business.
Phenomenal. So rapid fire questions from Arvind now. Noel, this might be new for you. Basically, only get 2 seconds to answer the question. That's it. So you don't get time to think. So literally 1 or 2 seconds, you have to blurt out the answer, literally what comes in your mind. Arvind.
Yeah, the idea is to have no filters. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
But just before I start rapid fire, I think this requires another episode with these two gentlemen here. I have so many questions I wanted to ask. I think we need to do a series 2 of the same topic, right? Yeah. Let me start with.
You're on mute, Noel. So,
So I was
that
going to
will
say,
not. Yeah,
if we're
that
going
will
to do
not
that,
be
I'd be happy to. I would just need a little preparation time because I don't mind a good debate, and I think friction is good to move ideas forward. Those are really good, but my neck is getting sore from all this agreement I've had with the conversation we've had. So I want to get some debate going. But I'll need a little therapy on my neck after for all the agreements I've had with my head nodding the right way.
So I'm gonna call out the name and ask you the question. So let me go first with Arun. Arun, what is your biggest marketing pet peeve?
Pet peeve?
Yeah.
It's the quality of content. Yeah,
Awesome.
I keep nitpicking all the time with my team.
What about you, Noel?
The things I can't control, which is almost everything, but when I have to rely on weather or things that I'm praying for and have no control over, that's my pet peeve. But I love the challenge of it. But when it's like, okay, I don't know if it's going to be a raindrop tomorrow that's going to cancel this thing after you put so much work and effort into producing an event. So inside is sometimes better than outside for us because we are a little bit more in control of the environment. But yeah, things are out of our control.
I saw you in London. I remember you in London.
I think some of these gray hairs are from that one.
Can I ask the second question, Arvind?
Yes.
Yeah, offline or online events, Noel?
Both.
You have to pick one.
Yeah, the hybrid. Yeah. Are you just asking my favorite one or just which I prefer?
Yeah, favorite one.
South by Southwest. It's an event based in the United States. It's a tech event. They've done an unbelievable job of blending these completely what seem like disoriented or disjointed things together: music, film, technology. They refer to it as a buffet, and you as the user have to choose which item of the buffet you want to eat from. It's not their job, it's yours to figure that out. They do an amazing job, and I'm always impressed with how they pull that off.
It's in my bucket list. I've never been to one. Arun, offline, online?
I would always pick offline. I just wish the world got back to a point where we could do those offline events. I think they're losing the human touch.
I'm with you on that. All right, so Arun, this is a question to you. Which is your favorite marketing productivity tool? Something related to events, like tool that you use to measure ROI, anything?
I would say the event platform that we currently use. I think it's extremely important to have a solid event platform for you to get the best ROI, and that should be able to enable all experiences that we want. We are currently using BigMarker as our event platform, and that's the platform on which we are hosting most of our recent events, and it's been doing well for us.
Noel, do you have a different answer?
No, I love them. We have actually been working with them as well. There's been so many that have sprouted up over the last, obviously, 18 months and have evolved so much. But we too are a fan of BigMarker as far as a marketing and conference platform goes. It's funny, I thought you were going to ask about a book, so I was starting to think about which book that I'd recommend from a marketing perspective. But yeah, they're terrific. I think having a great CRM tool is a great an essential piece of marketing strategy. I'm a little bit old school in just follow-up methodology. I like making phone calls in addition to emails and developing relationships with people. So the best tool is right here between our ears, and what you think would be the best way to develop that relationship with people. And sometimes it doesn't involve technology, or technology is a part of it.
All right. This is a tricky one. I'll go with Noel first. Who's your favorite go-to marketing influencer, or who you look up to, aspire?
2 seconds.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why Seth Godin comes to mind. He's terrific. I'm also a big fan. So that actually would bring you back to the book, Think Like a Monk. I think from a strategy perspective, having a more holistic approach to the author of Think Like a Monk, it's actually the book that I'm reading right now, as a great marketing mind. Because again, it's about relationships and how you develop relationships with people. Mine has been an amalgamation of so many people over the years. But right now, he's kind of got my attention and his perspective on developing relationships with people, both business and personal.
Arun.
Same question. I'm actually going to give a very philosophical answer. I mean, I'm very inspired by a quote from Sadhguru, which actually says, never look up to someone and never look down on someone, right? I think there is true source of inspiration in the day-to-day the people that you actually meet with every single day, even including your team. And I think great ideas are sprouting from everywhere across the world. So I look at everything that's going on around me for inspiration, not just to one person.
I had this question. I think you answered South by Southwest, but I wanted to ask Arun. So, which is your most favorite event you have attended and why?
Most favorite event that I have attended.
Yeah.
So in my previous life, gaming used to be a huge part of our business, and the Game Developer Conference was something that I used to really enjoy. Obviously, I've been to Mobile World Congress a lot as well, but I just feel like the Game Developer Conference is super fun. It's just, what you see even outside, the event venue and what goes inside. It just brings a whole it brings a very different kind of community together, and there is a lot of positive energy there.
Joy. I think that's the word, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Absolute sheer joy. That's what you experience in those events.
All right. I have one last question to both of you, and this is just to make sure we bring in aspired guests in this podcast. So, who will you want to see in the next podcast? So, just to clarify, this is for the Indian ecosystem, SaaSBoomi companies who are looking to build from India to the world, right? So keeping that in mind, who do you want to see as the next guest in this event, in this podcast?
Is this for the audience or is it for us?
This is for the audience and for us. We're putting you on a spot over here.
I'm doing lead gen, by the way. I'm going to call you and ask an intro right next.
I would say pick some of our friends from Freshworks who've gone on to start some companies on their own. I think when I look at what Sri Krishnan is doing with Rocket Lane, I find it pretty interesting. I think he's a guy who gets marketing as well. And he spoke very recently about how it is important to kickstart your marketing engine even before you achieve product market fit. And that resonated a lot with me. So I would say just we have a lot of inspiration from some of the budding entrepreneurs that are coming out from the Freshworks table. So, and I would pick Rocket Lane as well.
We have one lead, Arvind.
Yeah, he sits right next to me in the office. So
easy peasy. Noel.
Easy.
Gentlemen, you're probably familiar with a gentleman named Ritesh over at Browser Stack. I've been really, when anyone gets a nice chunk of funding like he has, obviously there's a lot of belief in the company and the culture. I think what they've done over there is really extraordinary. I'm always intrigued. We've been really fortunate enough to work with a number of Indian-based SaaS companies that are trying to advance marketing strategy into the United States and Europe. And when you talk about sort of the different protocols and different strategies around that to be truly a global company, I think that they've done a really nice job of that. And then on the US-based side, I would certainly like to have Jeff Bezos on.
Absolutely.
That would be certainly a treat.
Please do make the intro. Don't forget, Noel.
Arvind has us already booked on the next Blue Origin flight, so we'll have the podcast in space.
Perfect. Yes, but if you can't get him, Ritesh would be awesome to speak to, and I thought I'd get a lot out of a conversation you two would have with him.
Yeah, this has been amazing, fellows. Like a lot of insights that have been shared over here, which I think are extremely useful for the community. And really understanding the mind of the marketer or someone who's really gone ahead and pulled this off from India I think is very inspirational as well. And thank you, Noel, for always contributing back to the ecosystem and helping Indian companies crack the US market. I think that effort can't be understated in any possible way. And thank you both for also showing up for this one, for the first episode of Behind the Scenes for SaaSBoomi podcast. So this is going to be an epic special start to this, content that we'll produce over and bring out behind the scenes stories.
Yeah. So working with both of them, I think we have not done justice getting a most out of.
We're gonna have a season 2. We're gonna have series 2. There's gonna be like a series 2 over here. We will, just to not scare you, we'll not take too much of a time in the near future, but it's probably gonna be like a quarter from now. So you can kind of like rest, relax, kind of like gather your thoughts. But we're gonna have both of you back for like an episode 2 of this because there's a lot that was left to discuss.
Well, I appreciate you both doing this, the invitation. I'm honored to be part of this group and the discussion, and to think of me and the work that we do in this way it's an honor. It's a pleasure, and this was a real fun conversation.
And I'm super excited by what you guys are doing at SaaSBoomi, and I think the SaaS ecosystem in India really deserves to learn from what's already been done so that they don't repeat the same mistakes, but they also get inspired with new ideas. So always happy to contribute and give back. And it was, a real pleasure being here, sharing whatever we could in the short period of time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.